we're live, or at least we should be.
Hopefully we are. Check.
Yeah, so check out the audio. Let us know. This is our second stream, of course, and we're trying to improve it a little bit from last time. So let us know if the audio sounds good and the video stream seems good. We do have issues with internet in this office, unfortunately. I think we talked about that a little bit last time. So hopefully it's a little bit clear.
Fingers crossed.
All right, so we talked last time about how we're wanting to really kind of have a structure to this show. And so we've got our favorite segments, and the structure is going to be very simple going forward. It's going to be a new segment. I think always good to cover some of the latest topics that's going on in tech and anything else that we find interesting. No politics. We will keep that promise. Main segment, which we'll choose one main segment every single week, and we would love suggestions from you guys.
Oh, yeah. So to get started with the new segment, AI crackdown on YouTube, or really AI content more specifically. That's something that has been happening and doesn't really have people worried. I think a lot of people are here for it. But what is your thoughts on that for smaller creators especially?
Well, it needs to happen one way or another. And the question is, how do you make that happen? Because AI is here to stay. There are going to be creators who start creating their living off of AI content. And the question is, can AI be art? So with that being the case, how much do you cut back on it? And in what forms do you cut back on it? There's a lot of questions there. But then also just the technical capabilities of saying this is not worthy of being on the platform. And Google hasn't been the clearest about what it all is going to mean.
No.
So it's going to be kind of just up to them as usual. But we'll see. And I'm excited they're at least doing something.
Yeah, I guess the thing is I want to make sure they wouldn't crack down too much. Because one of the things people mentioned is obviously, if someone is hiring like a click farm basically to make AI content or just paying for an AI service to just churn out videos, no, you're sure there's a funny aspect to them, but even then, you don't want those spamming the platform, which I think that's happening. But one thing that someone did mention is if you're a small YouTuber and let's say you're using stuff like you're maybe doing Warhammer 40K and you're pulling up some art where you're making your own sort of AI artwork because you're not an artist to help, with your video, I don't think that should be cracked down upon.
No. Yeah, and one of the things about the whole AI crackdown, it's not, they kind of clarified it in something I saw where it was even more like, it's not just AI. They're calling it, I believe the term they used was like repetitive, useless content.
Yeah,
or
that was
like
it. It wasn't exactly. It was calling out AI without calling it out.
Right, and again, I'm all for it. There's not a whole lot of details. We'll see how it goes. So, moving on to our next in the news segment. Let me make sure we got that lower third. Yeah, okay, lower third. In the news.
In the news.
Yep, in the news. We're using these graphics for the first time, so bear with us. So Proton. A lot of you may know Proton for their great email service. They also are now creating a whole suite of tools. They're trying to be kind of like a G Suite or Office 365 alternative that respects your privacy. And their newest product they just announced is Lumo AI. And this is very similar to like ChatGPT or Gemini. And this just came out like this week. Have you heard about it at all, really?
I haven't. While you're pulling that up, I'm interested to see what it is because, I really only use Gemini. I know like my brother uses like Grok I know obviously it's a little different, but I'm interested to see what Proton is since their whole thing is end-to-end encryption, security, stuff like that.
And the cool thing about this is Lumo is keeping up with all the Proton products of it's still end-to-end encrypted. It's saying that it's not going to use any of your chats for training, which is pretty huge. It's also an open source model from everything I've been seeing. So it should be really good as far as like the privacy of it and all that kind of stuff, which is definitely something that's a huge concern with a lot of these other AI, large language models.
But it doesn't have a lot of features though, right?
Correct. And I have a Proton account, and so I logged in and gave it a shot. And my experience with it was really that it's got a ways to go. It's good. It does a lot of things that would have impressed us probably about 3 to 4 years ago. But in its current state, it's definitely not at the level of Gemini or ChatGPT when it comes to just trustability, reliability. I mean, being able to put in a question and expect an answer that you could rely on.
Yeah.
Like the test that I did was I asked Gemini when DaVinci Resolve added a timeline to the software, a video editing timeline, and Gemini gave me an answer that was correct, and it gave me kind of some good details and stuff. Well, I asked Lumo AI, and they said version 16, which is like 5 versions after they added that. And so it's definitely got some things incorrect. I corrected it actually, and it said, sorry, you're right. It was not version 16.
So it knows it's wrong.
It knows
but
it's
it doesn't
wrong.
say it the first time.
But I'm excited for the possibilities of it. It's 2-3 days old, so there's expected to be kinks in it, of course. But they got to iron some of that stuff out. It also promises some cool things to be able to read files like text files and Word documents and things like that.
Summaries, stuff like that. Okay.
Give you summaries, write some things off of things that you feed it. So it's got a lot of cool things, and it does have a web search function for premium subscribers.
And how much is that?
I don't remember.
Okay.
But I believe it's like $5 a month or something like that.
Okay, so yeah.
And so if you are subscribing enough to get the web search function, it probably is going to be a little bit more functional, probably be a little bit more accurate. But I think it's a fantastic, another step in the right direction. And I like that there's a lot of competitors on the market, because when something new comes out, a lot of times there's somebody who's the clear winner, and it kind of is ChatGPT. However, Gemini is actually putting a good dent on it. And then you have Claude, and now you have Lumo, and you have a lot of other ones. You have, what was that Chinese one? They even mentioned it here.
DeepSeek.
Mm-hmm. You know, DeepSeek and Copilot and everything. So there's a lot of large language models out there, and the more the merrier. And hopefully we see it pretty well, something where you don't have to choose, kind of like Android or iPhone. There's really no alternative.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So hopefully, like, large language models don't get stuck in that duopoly sort of thing.
Rest in peace, Pine Phone.
Watch our video on that on the channel. All right, so moving on to our next subject. This one is really kind of interesting, and it's a very nerdy subject, but that is NVIDIA has apparently announced that they are going to be creating CUDA for the RISC-V architecture. Is going to be supported on the RISC-V architecture of CPUs. And if you're not familiar, you've got x86 and ARM. Those are the 2 primary architectures. There are some other ones out there, but one that's kind of gaining some speed is RISC-V, and it is an open source CPU architecture. And it's gaining some popularity, but it's taking a long time. The cool thing about it is something like this could mean widespread adoption for it.
I mean, I'm always for another competitor. Anyway, obviously NVIDIA, a little mixed feelings about that, but because I know they also have their own ARM system that I think was delayed recently. They have a lot of issues or something, but this is pretty interesting to see. I've never used anything RISC-V. It's not something that
There's very few devices that have it.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's probably something a lot of people haven't heard of, but it's very interesting that they're working towards that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really hoping that this just means that there's going to be more adoption of the architecture. It just, whenever there's an open standard like that, it makes it a whole lot easier for everybody to support it and adopt it. And I don't know. It's a very specific piece of news, but I think it's super cool.
It's interesting. I think it'd be neat to see what computers come of it, or what comes out of it. With NVIDIA, which they've got a lot of power. They can swing something if they're trying to. I don't know if they're trying to make RISC-V more mainstream or not, especially since they're doing their own ARM computers, which I'm interested to see those.
Yeah, the N1X apparently had another delay, and they're saying it's because of software support currently.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens there. But our main subject, it is Slate versus Maverick. Jack had this idea, and I thought it was pretty cool.
So, one thing to clarify, not to get political, but one of the big selling points of the Slate, I would say, I'd say put it out a lot, was that the tax credit, the EV tax credit, basically puts it down to essentially a $20,000 truck.
Yes.
Well, EV tax credit's going away, which, as the current price of the Slate is putting it at around, I think, $28,000. Obviously, this is what...
I think it was $2,750 total.
Yeah, $2,750. That's what they were predicting.
Yep.
Which I think it was on I can't remember what Doug DeMuro's podcast was called.
This Car Pod.
Car Pod. A lot of people compared, of course, the Slate to the Maverick, which is the current cheapest truck, and it was sort of a no-brainer. But What's interesting is at that time, of course, with the EV credit, the Slate would be around 20,000 and the Maverick 28 because the Maverick was originally like 23, but it's gone up as time has gone on. So now that it's more of an even playing field, I'd say the Maverick's more expensive. The Slate's probably going to be a little more expensive. I'm interested to see how they're going to swing it because I'm excited for the Slate. I actually have a reservation for one, but I mean, it's a new company. You don't know how they're going to execute things, and you obviously, whenever you're investing in a new product, there's going to be issues. There's going to be just, it could be stuff that most people have gotten done, they've ironed out, but because it's a new person on the block, they've got to figure out how to do it. So,
don't buy first gen.
Yeah, don't buy first gen unless you're willing to deal with those issues. So I guess, I don't know, what is your take if you were a truck, you wanted to buy a truck, you're looking for something simple?
Yes.
That's the big thing about this, like simple. What would your thoughts?
Well, I personally disagree with Doug DeMuro in the framing of the question personally, because like this whole subject that we're doing now really is kind of kicked off by that comparison that they were doing.
And the framing of the question again would be on his podcast.
Yes, basically his whole thing on his podcast was the Slate versus the Maverick is the biggest competitor, and when somebody's going out to buy a vehicle, they're going to choose basically between those two trucks if that's the class of vehicle they're looking for. Okay, they're a very similar class to a degree, but I think we're talking about such different vehicles with such different purposes that you're not really going to see the Slate market cannibalized by the Maverick market or vice versa. No. Because when you look at the Slate, it's an EV truck with all of these extra functions and features. You can make it your own, and it just literally has...
It's customizable.
It's so customizable and everything, but it literally has no legacy of being a certain way or a certain thing. Somebody who's going to buy a Slate is going to buy it almost as a toy anyway. They're going to want to be more of a tinkerer. They're going to want to do all these things. Nobody's going to sit there and look at the Slate versus the Maverick knowing that they've got to buy a small truck like this and go, well, the Maverick's 4 doors and it offers these features and functions. No, somebody's going to either be into the Slate, in my opinion, or they're not going to be.
And that's fair because one thing to compare, even with the higher price of the Slate, is even if you're just buying it just for more so the novelty rather than a daily driver, you compare that to like a golf cart or maybe a Razor or not a Razor, but or whatever John Deere material or vehicles there are.
Yeah,
this is a street legal. It's essentially a street legal golf cart that could go default 150 miles of predicted range.
Yep.
Correct. And I think that value is so much better than if you like comparing it simply to like UTVs and ATVs, sort of like that. But when you compare it to like a Maverick, obviously, the Maverick has more of a history. Maverick, it's still a Turbo 4, I believe. That
it's a hybrid.
Okay, hybrid.
It's a hybrid by default, and I think that comes with a 4-cylinder. And I'm trying to remember if they add the option for a Turbo 4.
Well, my point was that I know that like they, you might have seen the marketing, they're advertising for hauling like a camper, which is not something necessarily you couldn't do with a Slate, but obviously EVs currently have an issue with hauling stuff. And so I think you're right that the people who are interested in a Slate, they're all in,
Yeah.
And I think that the comparison does have some warrant to it because, yes, they are 2 of the cheapest trucks. But I think there's a lot more, like in regards to simply lifestyle, what you can do with this. It's funny. I got an email from Slate the other day talking about, I cannot remember what it's called, platelets or something. It's basically these 3D printable things that you can put on your Slate to make it your own. Because that's one big thing they want to do. They show off the wraps. They show off the different customizable wheels or tires. They want it to make it your car, which is an interesting concept in itself compared to most manufacturers who, what paint do you want? What wheels do you want? Okay.
Well, and I think we have a good comparison here, and I'll screen share the screen again. I'll screen the share.
Nice.
No, but when you look at the Maverick, you're talking about a truck where you go to the website, which, if I'm not mistaken, by the way, the Maverick is only sold online, which is something very, very wild. But you look at the Maverick and you have your base model there, and it starts at 28,145 in the U.S. And the thing about that is that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? The Slate starts one way. Let me see here. Let's get it to the very start. But this is how it starts.
Mm-hmm.
So you're getting it a little bit cheaper still.
Yeah.
It's not a whole lot cheaper anymore, but you're still getting it a little bit cheaper than the Maverick. But that's what it starts at. Whereas the Maverick, it's like, okay, that's what you get. And this is why I don't think they're the same market. Because if you're somebody who wants just a vehicle to do vehicle things, then you pick which one of these 5 options you want of the Maverick.
Yeah.
Whereas with the Slate, you start with this, and then it can become any one of these. And it can change to any one of these whenever you've created it and you want something different. I mean, basically, you can take your Slate and make it something new every few years if you wanted to, almost like a pair of clothes. And so there's just so wildly different. I don't feel like it's quite a fair discussion to talk about the Slate in the same light as the Ford Maverick.
Yeah.
Personally.
I mean,
what do you think?
I get that to agree. I think most people are comparing it purely on a budget, money-to-money comparison. You know, because that's, I think, where Tug DeMuro was comparing it. And I think there is validity to that, because, of course, if you say, well, this one's 4 doors, and this one's 2 doors, and this one's got history, this can haul more, this one can't, this one's got more range, you know. I think that there is validity to that, but the people who are going to be buying a Slate, I think you're correct on the people who are buying a Slate versus buying a Maverick, completely different.
Yeah.
And the people who are probably going to be buying a Slate, I see that as almost like a Jeep crowd.
Yeah.
They're gonna, you know, if they're going to be into it, they're going to be really into it.
It's a Jeep crowd. I mean, in a funny way, the Slate is targeting us because you and I are both into tech and into vehicles.
But that's what's so funny about it, though. It's so not full of tech.
Right.
You know?
It's just a very exciting vehicle, and I feel like somebody who's not even a car person can enjoy this for, because you're right, the stripped out tech and stuff like that, but it itself is so customizable and so fun.
I think it has the potential to be, you know, one of the things people you probably heard online is, you know, why can't cars be more simple?
Uh-huh.
And that is one thing, you know, obviously a lot of EVs, there's a lot of tech that goes into them, but if you really compare, I guess, the core way it works compared to a normal gas engine is a lot more complicated. You have transmission, engine, all those components. And so, you know, obviously I know Slate's backed by Jeff Bezos, so, you know, we don't know what they're going to do, how repairable things are going to, say, be long term.
They've done a good job with the Rivian, though. I mean, it's not exactly, like, repairable or anything like that. I don't know exactly how they are on that front, but the Rivian has done very well, and you can depend on it being a vehicle. It's not a Fisker.
Yeah, exactly. You're not going to have your sunroof stuck open. But the thing about the Slate that I think is the most exciting and has the potential to be is the fact that they're going the very customizable route and that there's basically no tech in it, which means any tech you add is you. You are adding the tech. You're not like going into the builder. I mean, obviously you can add certain things into it, but you're the one who's going to be adding a screen and stuff like that. And because I would say electric technology in vehicles can be more simple. It can be more simple, easy to work on. There's a great potential for the Slate, considering that its whole thing is being customizable. It could be a great platform for people to just play around with, work on, and it'd be easy to get into that and easy to maintain, and just have it where this could be your vehicle that you tinker with, and that's maybe even the last vehicle you buy.
Yeah. Be straight up. If the Slate and the Maverick were sitting in front of you at their MSRPs, not the same price, not like you just got to pick one, but if you were actually in the market and you got either a base model Slate or Slate with nothing done to it, I guess I should
just
say.
the truck.
Just the truck.
No SUV.
Or the Maverick, which one would you be going with and why?
Probably the Slate, because I know it's sort of a boomer thing to say. Why can't things be more simple?
Yeah.
You know, I think,
Yeah.
and that's something I always see.
That's also a Gen Zer thing to say now.
Well, it's funny. It's old people and young people. I've seen that word simple over and over in the comments. You know, because you could say, okay, the cost difference between crank windows and electric windows is minimal, but people they're so tired of everything being just electronically controlled. They want it simple.
And I pose that question to you guys too, by the way. Which one would you choose, the Maverick or the Slate?
Yeah. And so I would choose the Slate because, number one, I like that you have the option of the upgradability, such as the SUV back. I'm someone who doesn't, I don't haul a bunch of people around. I've got a minivan for that. So what I do, if I'm using a work truck, I'm going to haul stuff like wood or, a grill or, I don't know, equipment that I'm buying. If I'm going on Facebook Marketplace, it works perfect for that. But if I need something enclosed later on, I could always upgrade to the SUV, and that comes with potentially 2 seats you can add, so then I can haul people.
Mm-hmm.
I think the scalability and the upgradability to grow with you is what is interesting about the Slate to me. That, because not really, obviously with trucks you can get like a tonneau cover and stuff like that.
Yep.
But the Slate's whole premise of sort of being everything is upgradable in a way. Not everything, you know what I'm saying. I feel like it's like a vehicle that could grow with you. And with what you need here and there, like they have the whole, like that picture right there of the off-road variant with kind of the bars in the back. That was the one before, but basically having, depending on what your lifestyle is at the time, it can sort of change and adapt with you.
Yeah, and currently there's only a 2-wheel drive model, which is another thing that I heard like Doug DeMuro in particular go on about it being only 2-wheel drive and stuff. But what I see with the Slate is this is not the end. This is just the beginning of what Slate is going to be able to do and be. And I think that it's very possible. There's also people who went to the launch event of the Slate, and they said that there was empty space in the front, almost as if they were planning on a second motor option.
Yeah.
Which would make it 4-wheel drive and give it a whole other set of capabilities.
And if they do it right, if they have it where older models could be upgradable.
Yes.
That's a whole other thing. And that leads, I don't know if they're going to do that, but if they do, that leads into the whole vehicle that grows with you, adapts with you, which I think is a really interesting idea of a platform, because it's a platform. The Slate is a platform. It's not necessarily a truck. It's going to be an SUV. I mean, it's a truck, Slate Truck, but it can be SUV, as they say, right? Mm-hmm. I think that vehicle that grows with you is a very interesting idea, and I'm really excited to see where it goes. I really hope it works out.
I do too, and I think it will for many reasons personally. But one of the reasons why I do think it will still succeed, even without the tax credits being there, is like the Ford Maverick is now being hit with tariffs because it's not manufactured in the U.S. And the Slate is. But the tariffs mean that the Maverick is now more expensive. And so you're still seeing the Slate as cheaper, and it's still like one of the cheapest options on the market if we're talking about price being a problem.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, and it's got so many capabilities, so many possibilities.
It's very optimistic, and I think it's about, was it next year, end of 2026?
Yes, that is the plan for its release.
That's when it's supposed to release, so we'll be able to see it more, who knows? I've got a reservation. I'm not necessarily on the fence about it. I definitely would love for it to work out, but there is, of course, it is still potentially $28,000.
Yeah,
which is still a good chunk of change.
We'll see. But yeah, I'm excited for the Slate and the Maverick.
Yeah,
I'm not a Ford guy.
No, I understand. Is there a comment there? I just want to check and see.
What is it?
A comment? I just want to check and see.
Yeah, NopTop did say that the audio sounds good, and in fact, NopTop also just what's happened to Dave, by the way. He says until we get what China has with battery swap stations instead of charging stations, EVs will only be useful for a very small group of people in certain regions. Now, that brings up a whole other subject, and I think that's awesome, so let's go down into that.
Okay.
Great comment, Dave. My view on these swappable battery systems is it cannot happen until there is an open standard that literally everybody uses and it is completely universal.
Yeah.
It cannot be proprietary in any form or function. And luckily the Tesla charger is now an open standard and everybody can use it. In fact, the Slate uses the Tesla charging standard. But if we're going to use a battery system, it has got to be universal, because then we are stuck in a really bad world. It's bad enough with cell phones, I mean, like, cell phones have got so much locked in and it's all proprietary and everything. It's bad. It's bad with laptops and all that kind of stuff. But now talk about your vehicle, your mode of transportation being locked into proprietary battery systems. That would suck.
Yeah. Especially like talking about certain cities, because obviously cities put investment in this. They do investment in one system,
Yep.
not another. Yeah.
To be clear, I actually love the idea, though. The hot swapping batteries would be super cool. And if they had a system almost like a gas station where you pull up, or I guess it'd be more like an oil change station, you pull through and then the batteries drop out and then a new battery gets plugged in, that'd be cool. That'd be really cool. But then there's also going to be the question of like, okay, are we charging for the battery packs themselves or just the recharge?
Yeah.
Or is it going to be like one of those Blue Rhino propane tanks kind of thing?
Well, also there's the aspect of like, if you're buying a vehicle, obviously it comes with the batteries. Then you go to a vehicle station, you get a new set of batteries. What happens to the old one? You did buy that.
Right.
And so, like, is the batteries just simply an extra cost? Because that's something that, obviously EVs have a lot of cost savings, but that may go against that.
I will say, companies' failures to adapt brings failure. I just said I said that.
Breaking news: water is wet. We're establishing things here.
Yeah. Allow me to explain what I mean. Kodak. Kodak made film, and they were dominant. You said Kodak; it was like saying Google today. And like, if you got film, you got Kodak 90% of the time. And nowadays, you say Kodak, and you're like, don't they make like some disposable cameras or something like that? You don't know who they are, right? And so what I'm saying is, EVs are not going to be taking over gas anytime soon. But what I'm saying is, you could have Shell or some other major oil producer, something like that, energy producer, create a universal battery system that all vehicles could use, because they could be concerned right now about it cannibalizing their gas or oil market or anything. And it's like, well, now make a battery, get into lithium production or whatever the case is, and create a battery system that everybody can use.
Yeah.
And I think a third party from one of the auto manufacturers would actually probably be a pretty good thing. Now, it's one of those things like, GM could make an open standard battery that everybody could use, and that's just as fine. But like, if somebody literally uninvolved with any of the auto manufacturers made their own battery that was universal, I think that'd be killer.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to have it for the sake of simply, obviously the automakers had their own incentives. Having a neutral party would be good for that, to potentially keep it, because you don't want them having like, these vehicles have the good batteries and these vehicles have the bad batteries.
Yeah.
But that is an interesting thought. That's good. That's a good comment.
Yeah, good comment. Thank you for that. And so let's move on to our next subject here, which is, well, I have to type it. So Jack, distract everybody.
I believe, if I recall the script correctly, it's a channel shout out.
Well, yeah, we can do the channel shout out.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't.
It was, what are we working on?
Okay, well, you know what? We can do this real quick while he's typing. One of the channel shout outs we want to do was to Tech Over Tea, which is Brody Robinson's show mostly about Linux. We were on there recently.
Yep.
He's putting a lot of clips about that. If you want to check out Tech Over Tea on YouTube.
We had a blast on his show.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We really appreciate it, showing us. We've seen a big bump, or big bump.
A couple hundred subscribers, and we appreciate you guys being here.
Yeah.
And our plan is to have Brody on our show at some point soon as well. So
although we might not, because we have no plan. So
we have no plan. That is true.
But what are we working on? We have got. We always have a few projects in the works, but right now we have got a lot of computer tech stuff related.
Yes. We've been teasing this one for a little while. It's kind of been delayed. Running a company can take some time, but we're finally going to be able to wrap this up. Our plan is actually to shoot it tomorrow. We have got $100 video editing computer, and I'm telling you, it's kind of nuts. Like, sure, it is $100 computer, but it's $100 editing computer.
And what can it be editing? What kind of footage?
6K raw footage. We're able to edit 6K raw footage on this $100 computer, and it has been nuts to see what it can actually do. So we're super excited about that video coming out for you soon. As well as we're going to be going kind of to the opposite end of the spectrum, and we're going to be building a brand new $2,000 video editing machine,
Yes.
which of course we'll be doing some gaming testing and all that kind of stuff on it as
We
well.
might even we maybe not live stream, might record the whole
That's
build
not a
process.
bad idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could live stream it while we film it. Actually, it's not a bad idea
People
at
tell
all.
us put the chip the wrong way,
Yeah. You got to put on at least a good 3 ounces of thermal paste.
And then wear your "What Would Jesus Do" bands as you for no electricity. But
So the next thing that we've kind of got going right now
Big
is
reveal.
Yes, I have a 1985 Monte Carlo SS. She is my baby. She was my first car, and I'm actually coming up on 10 years of owning her next year. And so she's old. I've already put in a different engine. There's a lot of things that she has going wrong with her, though. And so the plan is to start the resto modding process. And here on the channel, and we'd love to hear you guys' comments and ideas for this whole process. But our plan is to be able to cover this resto modding process of this Monte Carlo right here on NoPlan.
yeah, because one thing, obviously, we've gravitated more toward a tech oriented, mostly Linux field on YouTube, but we both enjoy cars, and this is something we've wanted to do. Obviously, cars have a lot more moving parts than computers, in both video and physically, and so this has been something we've wanted to do for a while, and it may be a little bit before we get this rolling, but
It's an expensive process, too.
it's an expensive process, yes, but we're wanting to get the ball rolling, and we'd like to potentially get into more automotive projects in the future, but this is going to be a start.
It's going to be a good start. I mean, I just bought a Dakota Digital Dash for those who are familiar, and that's going to replace the old analog gauges in there. And so that'll be kind of our first step of the process. And we may have several months in between some videos about it, just because we're going to document the process. And as you guys enjoy it, hopefully we can make more.
Yeah, we want to see it. We want to gauge it. Again, we know that we have a bit of a tech audience, but this is NoPlan. We have no plan. We want to try different things. We want to experiment and basically make videos about what we love.
And if you are a car person and you want to see more car content, or if there's any other interests you guys think that us crazy dudes would actually also find a similar interest in, let us know, because seriously, NoPlan can go a million different directions, and we want it to.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, so very, very exciting there.
Yeah, so I think, do you have any other projects we're working on right now for NoPlan?
So currently there might be a couple, again, back to computers, a couple laptops, might be working on another desktop. Instead of it being a 2000, it's probably going to be a $0 machine using scrap parts. However, some of those scrap parts are acting up, so they may be a bit delayed. But that's something that we've got in the works.
That'll be cool. All right, so our final subject for this podcast, and like we've said, we are creating a static format so that you guys can expect it every week. I personally love that kind of podcast, and we're going to start treating this more as an actual podcast. We're gonna experiment with YouTube's podcasting features and stuff. But I personally love the kind of podcast where there are static episodes that you can expect each and every week.
Yeah.
And so our final subject for every week, and we want you guys to comment yours, are app suggestions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is something we want to start. We're going to suggest an app, but we also want to hear your suggestions and it can be anything, just, helpful tools. Maybe really just what helps you. And that one thing that helps us is remove.bg. This is a very cool app that I discovered that if you've ever downloaded an image and it's, it's a PNG, but you look at it and it's a fake PNG, our application, it can be an application or you can just run it in the browser, can help. And it has 2 tiers. It's got a free and a paid tier. The paid tier allows you to export your images in full resolution, while the free tier, it's like 600 by 600. It's a lot smaller, but from what most people would need, this would do the job.
Yeah, and to be clear, all these app suggestions right now and in the future are not sponsored at all.
No.
So we actually just use this app a lot. We love it, and like Jack said, it does have a standalone desktop app, and the cool thing is you can do like batch processing, so that it will remove the background from hundreds of photos, and you can either make it transparent, or you can even replace the background right there in the app, as well as In fact, we can show you here. This is one of the coolest things about it. It has plugins to some of your favorite apps. And I, of course, am a GIMP user, and I've integrated it into GIMP, and it works really, really well.
Yeah, but Photoshop, Figma, it's a great piece of software. Again, the fact that it's got a free version is awesome, and it even works on static photos. Like, it doesn't have to be a person. If you could clearly see what object that you'd want cut out, it will do it really easily. And I haven't really had any issues. The only ones I have is low resolution images, but they're low resolution images, you know.
Yeah, by default, the one caveat is the resolution of the image that you're allowed to download is a little too small for most uses that I've had.
Yeah, for professional uses, you'd probably want to pay for credit. But for personal uses, it's perfectly fine if you're just trying to cut out an image and get rid of a fake PNG layer.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that...
No. Fin.
Oh, yes.
There we go. We're
fancy.
cinema.
Is it Finette?
No, just Fin.
Is it F-I-N?
Just Fin.
Oh.
There we go.
And we'll do it in English, too.
Okay. But this has been the end, Finn, of NoPlan, the second episode of the NoPlan podcast. We're refining it as we go. As you can see, we are on our famous background for YouTube. You know, this is not green screen at all.
No, we put this up on our wall.
Exactly.
As you see when I move my hand, there's no green
perfect.
in between the fingers.
But we're refining our processes as we go on. This is a podcast is one of the ways. Obviously, we want to eventually increase how much content we're making. But for right now, we want to try to keep to the monthly. Oh my gosh, what are you doing?
Nothing.
We want to kind of try to keep to the monthly video uploads and the podcast as well to give you guys as much content as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. And we want to hear your suggestions, your ideas for this show. We're loving doing this show, and so we'll just leave it up to you as to what you think we should do for it. So thank you very much for watching.
And we'll see you on the next episode or video of NoPlan.
Catch you next time.